everyone. Welcome to the Frontier Foundry podcast. I'm Allison Mack.
And I'm Wesley Mack.
And together we are passionate about all things hunting, fishing, and being outside together. And today we are super excited to be in Medina, Texas. We're here today with Madera Ranch owner Charly Seale.
Welcome, Charly.
Hey, I appreciate you having us, and it's a pleasure to welcome Frontier Foundry out here to the Madera.
Yes, sir.
Gorgeous backdrop.
Yep. So today's episode, we're talking about exotic ranching 101. You know, if you're a beginner to the exotic industry, how do you get started? What are the things that you need to do? And we're incredibly blessed to be joined by Charly Seale. Charly Seale has been in the exotic industry for 25 plus years.
That's close.
Okay.
That's close.
Last 22 as the executive director
of the Exotic Wildlife Association, and
yes,
and we've now moved on. We've retired, and we're looking for a new adventure.
That's right. That's right. And you're looking to kind of share some of your wisdom in the exotic ranching industry.
Well, what we'd like to do is, you know, there's a lot of pitfalls, there's a lot of successes, and we think that we've shared a little bit of everything, and we've learned it from personal experience. And so we're hoping to be able to share that today with any of those that may be interested in getting into the exotic industry, or maybe in the exotic industry and they've experienced some pitfalls and want to know how to maybe get around those.
Yes, sir. So for our viewers, make sure we set the table for all of our sports fans. This is basically Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes sitting down with an ESPN anchor and telling them exactly how they're winning all these championships. So that's the level of information that Charly is just oozing out of them. This is a Texas Hill Country icon, hunting, ranching icon.
Fourth generation rancher.
That's right. So
yeah.
Here we are today. We're at the beautiful Madera Ranch, and we're sitting in the deer pens.
These as people can see, these pens behind us and the whole infrastructure of the Madera Ranch took years and years to get here, and a lot of mistakes, a lot of successes, and I think that we've got something now that we can pass on to our kids and my kids and our grandkids.
Thank you for that. And we're actually sitting in the Axis breeding pen.
We're in the Axis breeding pen, and located directly behind me is the scimitar horn breeding pens, and then right behind that is the Gemsbok breeding pens. Now to the east of us, which would be back off behind me, that is kind of open pasture, and we raise a Blackbuck and Axis over there. But these that are here in the pens that we're in today they're a little bit special. They're some that we've chosen out of our main herd to bring in here and to hopefully facilitate our herds as well as sell to other breeders.
Yes,
and now over the years, you've seen the exotic industry as a whole absolutely explode. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Well, back when I first started, especially in the exotic industry, they called them the strangers on the range. And they really didn't, people weren't really into the exotic industry at that point. And over the years, it's evolved. And I think probably the main thing that has caused the explosion in the last 5 or 6 years has been the finding of chronic wasting disease here in Texas. Also, the regulations that Texas Parks and Wildlife has absolutely gutted the whitetail industry. With onerous restrictions, and has killed a very viable industry. So in response to that, rather than breeders getting totally out of the ranching business, they've turned to alternative livestock, the non-traditional livestock, which we call exotics.
You've seen it explode. You've also seen it ebb and flow. What are some of the trends that have become more popular over the last 5 or 10 years?
Well, when we first started, we lumped the exotics, the species themselves, into commons and to supers. Yeah. The common exotics are the ones that are obviously less expensive than what we would say for the supers.
And with the commons, we're talking
Axis, fallow, blackbuck, sika, things like that. In the super end of it, we're talking about sable, kudu, bongo, and those scimitar horns, gemsbok, and those larger, more expensive animals.
Yes, sir. And so over the last 5 to 10 years, the trend, if you're starting out, the trend is probably not to go straight to supers. It's to stick to maybe the common.
Well, you know, and a lot of that is really guided by your budget.
Okay.
If you've got money to play with, money to burn, and you really want to get in, jump both feet into the exotic industry, then certainly, you know, kudu, sable, and things like that are the way to go, because in the end, you're obviously going to be making more money off the more expensive animals. But, you know, my suggestion for anybody that's new to the industry,
yes, sir,
is to say, you know, get into the Axis, Blackbuck, get something that is affordable for the average person. And people think, well, you know, I don't have the acreage to do this with. Well, that's so far from the truth.
Yeah, what's the common acres needed?
You know, when I first got into the Exotic Wildlife Association, the average acreage of a ranch in Texas was around 1,000 acres. Over that 20-something years that I was with EWA, I saw those acreage diminish as land fragmentation took over. Yeah. And now you can make your land payments, you can make a decent living, pay your taxes on very, very small acreages. Not really good, suitable for anything else, but it's great for exotics.
Right. And talking about sticking with, you know, 101, you're getting into the exotic ranching industry, or you're putting exotics on your ranch. You need a high fence.
In most cases, yes, you need high fence, but there are some of the exotics, such as your sheep species, your blackbucks, even the scimitar horns, will do very well behind a 4-foot, what we consider a low fence, 4-foot net wire. Now, don't think you're going to put barbed wire out there and keep them there, because they will go through it. But for the main part, 4-foot fence on those type of animals. But I really wouldn't start unless I had an 8-foot fence surrounding at least a couple of pastures to keep those animals in so they don't escape.
Yeah, and a lot of what you've done here at the ranch that I've been lucky enough to witness is you've kind of moved in and out of species, and then you also rotate your animals in different fields. We
have over the years, and I guess 25 to 30 years that I've been in the exotic business. Now, keeping in mind, my grandfather and his father and my dad were all in the sheep, goat, and cattle industry, and I can't think of anything that's more boring than a cow. And so after my dad passed and the ranch, my portion of the ranch came to me, that was my goal. I high fenced it and then started the infrastructure. But I started with Axis and Blackbuck. But we have had to rotate, and we do rotate. We've got several pastures out here to where, like this, there's a pasture right here behind me that we call our scimitar horn pasture. I can get that shut off until the crops that I plant in there get to a size that then I graze it. And that helps tremendously with your feed bills, because your feed, hay, and things like that are obviously outside of the cost of the animal, are your most expensive things that you're going to embark on.
That's exactly where I was going next. So in years in Texas where it doesn't rain a whole lot, there's not a lot of natural forage at these exotics. So just educate us. What are your commons going to be eating?
Well, you know, of course, with Axis and the blackbuck are a lot like your sheep and goats. They graze all the time, all day. And they'll stay out there and graze in the hot sun. They love the heat. Okay. So you'll see them in the middle of the summer, 100+ degrees. They're laid right out in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. Axis, on the other hand, they're primarily grazers, but they also and they will browse. They would rather browse so a lot of people say they are in conflict with your whitetail, sure, who are strictly browsers. That's what everyone says. And it all boils down to one thing, and that's managing the numbers and the carrying capacity of the land.
Of the land.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got our commons. We've got, they typically, you have to supplemental feed
in the hard summer, and we're coming on that, as you can see, the ranch was very, very green just a few weeks ago, and it's starting to dry now. And as it dries, these animals are going to need supplemental feed. Okay. The dry grasses and even the hay that you feed them does not have enough of the nutrients they need to grow antlers and muscle mass in their bodies. Now on this ranch, we primarily feed Purina feed because they do have a very good mixture for exotic animals, and we also feed Lissy and Echo feed, and they also have a very good exotic feed. In addition to they gear their nutrients for particular species. One of the things that we'll start doing is putting out hay, and we try to keep hay out for them year round, but right now they've had enough to eat, and so we'll start in the next few months, or few weeks I should say, putting the hay and supplemental pellets into a free choice feeders.
Okay. So they're, depending on the range conditions and carrying capacity, you've got to have supplemental feed. And if some of our readers are maybe absentee ranch owners, is a ranch manager or somebody checking on your animals, is that just table stakes? You've got to have it, or is it just about frequency?
If you're able to come to your ranch on a regular basis, you can probably get by on a small place. You can get by without a ranch manager, but I can't emphasize enough the importance of ranch managers if you get the right
one. Yeah.
We've had so many instances, and of course my background before I was in the exotic business, my background was law enforcement. Yes, and so the old crooks that were out there stealing cattle and horses and everything like that, they've seemed to shift it over to the exotic industry. So we have a lot of thefts, and a lot of that boils down to unscrupulous ranch managers. So my advice, when you're dealing and picking somebody to run your ranch, do your homework, do your backgrounds
check
on
references.
these people, check references on them, where they've been in the past, because that is going to be very important. We've had so many of our ranchers that will call me and say, you know what, I had 200 axes and now I don't see hardly any. Well, my first question to them, how well do you know your ranch manager?
Wow.
And I'm not saying anything bashing about the ranch manager, just know who you're hiring.
Sure. And that's something that our third spin out of Frontier Foundry is called Texas Turnkey Ranches. And one of the offerings is an exotic assessment, so exotic ranching assessment led by you. And choosing the right guy, somebody that maybe has to talk to Charlie, right? And you have to find some history on the guy.
Yeah, you need to check, and we could help with that. Do the backgrounds and the different things like that. We can certainly check and check the references, things. That's what we did for many, many years.
Chances are we
could get a pretty good feeling on who you're hiring. I would say 99.9% of every ranch manager out here is a good, upstanding, hard-working guy, and but it doesn't take but that 0.1%, and you've got a disaster on your hands.
And if we're talking about an asset class as land and an income stream as your commerce, as your animals on your ranch, you're talking about some pretty good size money on some of these ranches, right?
Well, you can, if you're, especially on a ranch that has a lot of supers on it, and not even just the supers, has a lot of axes. Axes right now, the prices and the market value of those animals are tremendous. Yeah. And I'll use fallow as an example. The fallow right now are just absolutely, they're exploding. And it's amazing some of the animals that are being raised right now and the prices they're getting for them. And so the last thing you need is somebody taking them out the back door,
right?
And your revenue stream is zero.
Yeah. You protect your assets, and this is no different.
Right.
Yeah. So, Allison, you were lucky to grow up here and see this ranch change and see these different deer. What's some of the favorite deer that maybe the ladies like to see out there in the pasture?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at them right now. The scimitar horn oryx are beyond beautiful creatures. I've seen so many different species out here, and they're so unique. They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful.
But I do have a question. Having grown up here and seen so many different species, what has been the most challenging species that you've had here at the ranch?
And only one.
Well, they're all a challenge, and they all have their unique characteristics. But I think the hardest thing is that we've had is dealing with is the Gemsbok. Gemsbok, they don't do well in small acreages. They have a tendency, and they're born wanting to hurt you.
Okay.
And so you've got to be very careful
aggressive
around them. And
yeah.
So when we're dealing with our Gemsbok, we're strictly chemical immobilizing them. We're tranquilizing them, if you will, and dealing with them that way. I would never, we've got handling facilities that we can run our animals through and load them onto a trailer. But Gemsbok, that's one of those unique animals that we don't put through the barn because he's going to hurt you if he gets a chance. So
if you've got a ranch full of Axis and Blackbuck and potentially even fallow and maybe some Cinnamon, you've got a beautiful ranch, and you've got a nice set of animals on your ranch.
Well, here we've had a little bit of, as Allison alluded to, we've had a little bit of everything over the years, from elk, red deer. We've even had zebra here on the place, and they didn't last very long because that was one of those. That's the good thing about Texas is that it has over 130 different species of exotics, and people will find. It's amazing what I may like, you may find that you don't care for it.
Sure.
And that's the neat thing about the exotic. Yeah. And zebra, I didn't care anything. You can't ride them, and you can't, anything. So they're pretty to look at, but the males are very cantankerous, and they will sometimes hurt the colts.
Yeah.
And you just don't. We don't deal
like
with
that.
them here.
Yeah.
No.